Okay, so let's key out some tarweed plants from our site. We have a bunch of different tarweeds, and let's start with this one right here. Okay, so here's a plant that has a head that has both ray and disc flowers, so that's termed radiate because we have two types of flowers. Okay, so we know, just looking at our flower, that it is a sunflower, so we're going to start in the Asteraceae family or the composite family. The first step in the key is 1 and 1 prime. So none of the flowers of the heads with strap-shaped corollas that resemble spreading petals. So we have what look like petals. Those are those basically yellow with white tips ray flowers. Okay, so we're going to pick 1 prime. Next, is our head composed of one kind of flower, or is our head composed of 2 kinds of flowers? We have more than 1, because 1 would be an example like dandelion. It's only ligules, so it's a liguliferous head. Or if you just had disc flowers, for example, that'd be another example. So we clearly have 2, and our head is what's termed radiate. So that's the type of head or inflorescence that we have. Two kinds of flowers. Okay, receptacle bearing scale-like bracts or palea that generally individually subtend disc flowers. Sometimes only a single ring of palea separate ray and disc flowers. So this is what makes a tarweed here, one of the things. Okay, so remind yourself what palea is. Here's Helianthus annuus, and you can see that white material that holds the seeds, that's palea. So you can see it really clearly because this plant is huge. Helianthus annuus is huge. But on our plant, we have this special ring. So I took all of the disc flowers out and just tore it open so you can see. And you see the palea? They sit right there. There's 2 on that you can see. And they just form basically this ring all the way around. And they're not anywhere else. So this white material here, this is the palea on this inflorescence, this head. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So we have a ring. That's what makes us have a tarweed, or one of the things. Next, filaries in a 1 to 2 series, each subtending a ray flower. Or are the filaries in a 2+ series, not subtending ray flowers? So here is an example of a 2+ series. It's basically like having rows. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of filaries. Okay, but on our plant, let's look closely at that. You only have 1 row. So you don't have, you have a 1 series. Okay, and it seems that tarweeds can have a 1 or 2 series according to the key. So that brings us straight to group 10. Group 10 is the tarplant key. So step 1, filary margins plus or minus flat, not clasping or enclosing ray ovaries. Or 1 prime, filary margins folded, clasping or enclosing the ray ovaries. In this case, they are really clasping or enclosing the ray ovaries, that you actually have to pop the seeds out. They're so hard to get out of there. So it's really enclosing the ray ovary. So that's something you'll have to look at in the microscope or just with your hand lens. Mature ray fruit is compressed front to back. Adaxial face generally plus or minus covered by filary margins. Or is the mature ray fruit compressed side to side or 3-angled? Or round in cross section, adaxial face covered by filary margins or not. So to understand that better, because it's a little bit confusing, you want to look down at your head. So you're looking from the top down at your sunflower. And you want to look and see, are the seeds sitting like this inside the rays, or are they sitting more like this inside the rays? So this is an example of how Layia sits. This is the plant that we're keying out right here. So you'll see that when you look under the microscope at that head. Okay, so then our next step, disc flowers 1 or 2 annual, 1 to 20 centimeters, or disc flowers 3 to 120 annual or perennial. So clearly we have more than 1 or 2 disc flowers. Do you see how we probably have like 20? Those are all those flowers in the center. So you can see that there are a bunch in the center. Okay, and then perennial rhizomed, disc corolla white, or annual disc corolla yellow, sometimes aging or plus or minus red. So we clearly have an annual here. You can see, here's the roots. You can see all the fibers coming off. So that makes it an annual. It doesn't have this hard root, like woody root, like a perennial would have. And then this plant just dies. It's already starting to die. You can see the seeds are already dispersing, and it wouldn't be around for very long. Okay, so we picked that we have an annual, and we have a bunch of flowers, and then we have an annual, and then our pappus of 10 obtuse scales, 3 to 13 millimeters, or fruit 10 ribbed, or 10 to ribbed, or pappus 0 or of awns, bristles, or acute scales, 5 to 7 millimeters, fruit is not ribbed. Okay, so let's look a little closer. We clearly have, so right above the seed is the pappus. So you can see that pappus. It's really obvious. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and see if you can see it. It's even kind of got roughened edges. You can see that from this video. So this is a great example of a pappus of bristles. So we're going to select pappus of bristles for this plant. And then the final step here is ray flowers 5, disc flowers 6, staminate, pappus 0, or are the ray flowers 3 to 27, disc flowers 5 to 125, bisexual, pappus 0 to 132, awns, with awns, bristles, or scales. And we clearly have probably at least, 25 plus disc flowers. And we have a bunch of rays. We have, at least, I would say at least 10. So that fits 8' really well here. So that brings us to Layia. Now, to save a little bit of time, we can go through this key and key through 25 plus Layia species in our state, or varieties and subspecies, or we can try this other key because you can use a bunch of different tools. This is the Flora of Southern California, or MUNS. And since we collected this in Southern California, this is collected near Lake Elsinore, we can try keying out in here. So pappus deciduous, and so you can see how many Layia we have in Southern California, not as many. Pappus deciduous, so clearly we know it's not deciduous. Here's our pappus. It's still hanging out there with the seed. It's not falling off at all. So deciduous just means falling off, or pappus persistent. Stem not prominently fistuous, so that means is it hollow? So it's not, it's kind of hard. Ligules white or yellow with white tips. So hey, that's exactly what it is. Our ligules are yellow with white. They're yellow with white tips. And so, well, then that keys right there to Layia platyglossa, or tidytips. So these are our beautiful tidytips, and they're everywhere around Lake Elsinore. Not as common in San Diego County. But again, you can see how the pappus is really persistent. So if you were collecting the seed, you'd still have the pappus hanging out on there, that pappus of bristles. Okay, so there's our first tarweed. Let's key out another one.